Welcome to VEILVANQUISH, where we delve into the unknown and unexplained. Tonight, we take you deep into the northern forests of Canada, into a place that's become known not just for its chilling winds or howling wolves, but for what some say is a breach in time itself. They call it Brewer's Hollow, a forest so old it's not marked on any current map, a place where compasses spin, watches stop, and those who enter often do not return the same, or at all. In the spring of 2007, two bright college seniors, Lena Harrington and Matt Crane, packed their car for what they told their parents was a simple weekend hiking trip. But their destination, a remote patch of Appalachian wilderness known as Brewer's Hollow, was chosen for a different reason. Lena, a folklore enthusiast, and Matt, a self-proclaimed skeptic along for the adventure, were drawn by the whispers and warnings that clung to the hollow like the morning mist. For generations, locals spoke of the hollow in hushed tones. They called it the glitch, or the long nap, a place where time didn't just pass, it bent, fractured, and sometimes disappeared entirely. Stories abounded of hunters who went in at dawn and emerged moments later, only to find it was dusk. These were the tales that fascinated Lena, and the ones Matt was determined to debunk. GPS logs confirmed they reached the Brewer's Hollow trailhead on a bright Saturday afternoon. Their last post on a university hiking forum was cheerful, almost mocking the local legends. They pitched their tent in a sun-dappled clearing, the picture of youthful confidence, unaware they were standing on the threshold of the inexplicable. They were due back on campus by Sunday evening. When Monday morning came with no word, their families reported them missing. The initial search was textbook. Rangers found their car locked, but inside the forest the trail went cold. The search escalated into one of the largest in the state's history. Over 200 volunteers, K-9 units, and helicopters with thermal imaging scoured every inch of the 50-square-mile search area. For 10 agonizing days, they found nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no discarded gear. The forest, it seemed, had swallowed them whole. And then, on the 11th day, the impossible happened. A local logger, driving down a service road miles from the search area, saw two figures emerge from the tree line. It was Lena and Matt. They walked out of the forest, 11 days after they'd entered. They were calm, dazed, and barefoot. A medical examination revealed they were perfectly hydrated and nourished, showing none of the signs of exposure one would expect. The logger later told police their feet were pristine, as if they'd been walking on moss, not the rocky, unforgiving terrain of the hollow. It was their timeline that made no sense.
When questioned, both insisted it had only been a few hours. Matt said, "We had lunch, walked around, followed a stream. It was really quiet, unnaturally quiet. Then we felt tired, so we found a sunny spot and took a nap. Then we came back."
He couldn't explain the 11 missing days. To him, it was a Saturday afternoon. But Lena added something strange, an account of a dream she had during their nap, a dream that felt more real than waking.
"I saw my grandmother. She's been dead since I was 12, but she was there, standing between these ancient-looking birch trees. She was wearing the yellow dress she always wore for Sunday service. She just smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was patient, like she was waiting for me, and she held up a single finger like she was saying one more minute, or not yet."
One final, inexplicable detail emerged when their gear was recovered from the campsite, untouched. Everything was there, except for a small silver locket Lena always wore, a gift from that same grandmother. It was gone. In its place, resting on her sleeping bag, was a single, perfectly smooth, dark stone, cool to the touch, and of a type not found anywhere in the region. The case was officially closed, but the questions had just begun. George Ellison was a man who lived his life by the second. A world-renowned horologist, his obsession wasn't just with gears. It was with the fundamental, unyielding rhythm of the universe. So when he abruptly retired in 1995, his peers were baffled. He purchased a secluded cabin on the edge of Brewer's Hollow, a place locals spoke of in hushed tones, a place where time was said to be unreliable. For a man like George, it wasn't a place to hide, it was a puzzle to be solved. He arrived intending to document what he believed was a unique temporal phenomenon, his initial journal entries meticulously logging every sunrise, sunset, and the perfect, synchronized ticking of his beloved machines. The first anomaly was almost imperceptible. A flawless 19th century cuckoo clock was off by a single second. To anyone else, nothing. To George, it was a declaration of war. He dismantled it, recalibrated it, but the next day, it was off by 3 seconds. Soon, it wasn't just one clock. A grandfather clock began to run slow, its pendulum swinging with a heavy, lethargic grace. A modern clock on his nightstand raced forward, its hands a frantic blur. His workshop became a horological hospital ward. He worked feverishly, his logbooks filling with frantic notes about a temporal sickness. The true horror began when he tried to silence them. He unplugged electric clocks, but their displays remained lit. He removed batteries, yet the hands continued to sweep across their faces. He even dismantled the mechanical ones, removing their mainsprings. But a faint, ghostly ticking persisted from their inert metal bodies, a sound he described as the memory of time itself. His journal entries grew more erratic. A week before he vanished, he wrote, "The sun did not set tonight. It hung on the horizon for an extra hour, bathing the woods in a sickly orange light. The world is holding its breath." Then came the final, terrifying entry. "I woke at 2:15 a.m., not by a sound, but by a sudden, crushing silence. Then it began. A single chime, then another, until all 20 clocks in my home were chiming in perfect, deafening unison. But I only own one clock with a chime. The sound was inside my head, a frequency shaking my very bones." For 3 days, there was silence. The mail carrier noticed mail piling up and called the sheriff. Deputies found the cabin sealed tight, the door bolted from the inside. No footprints. Forcing entry, they found the cabin eerily tidy. A half-finished cup of cold coffee sat on the workbench, his journal open to that final entry. George Ellison was simply gone. No signs of a struggle, no indication he had ever left. But the clocks. Every single timepiece had been grotesquely transformed. They weren't broken, they were distorted. The grand-grandfather clock had slumped to the floor, its case warped. The intricate metal faces of his collection had dripped down the walls, the numbers stretched into dolly-esque shapes. Even a digital clock had melted into a puddle of black plastic, its display frozen on an impossible glyph. The air hung thick with the smell of ozone. There was no fire, no heat source. It was as if George Ellison's obsession had consumed him, leaving behind only the melted, silent ruins of time itself. There's only one man who dares patrol Brewer's Hollow, Ranger David Kells, now 67. For 40 years, he's been the sole guardian of this land, a place other rangers transfer out of within months, citing unnerving experiences and a crushing sense of isolation. Kells stayed, but for most of his career, he was silent for decades about what he saw. It was a self-imposed rule, a shield against the forest's psychological toll, a vow he took after the disappearance of a young hiker in '88, an event that left him shaken and unwilling to speak of the wood's true nature. Until recently, the silence was broken not by a choice, but by an impossibility. On his desk one morning, sitting squarely on a stack of reports, was a brass compass. It was pristine, yet Kells recognized it instantly. It belonged to that same hiker who vanished 34 years ago. There was no sign of entry, no explanation. It was simply there. This was the final straw, the anomaly too blatant to ignore, forcing him to finally share the burden of his knowledge. He claims the forest is not haunted, but something worse. "It's not ghosts," he explains, his voice raspy from disuse. "It's memory, it's loops. Like time folds in on itself and you end up meeting shadows of who you used to be or who you might become." He describes it as echoes of powerful moments, imprinted on the landscape, replaying without warning. You might hear a laugh from a picnic that happened a century ago, or see a fleeting glimpse of a future hiker rounding a bend, only to vanish. The forest, he believes, remembers everything, but its memory is fractured, non-linear. It's a library where all the books have been thrown in the air, and you're just walking through the falling pages. The evidence he's collected defies all logic. He once found his own initials carved in a tree 20 feet off the ground, but he never carved it. He says, "It was my handwriting, same knife strokes I use, but I've never climbed that tree." More disturbing was the discovery he made last spring. Tucked inside the hollow of a fallen log was a small silver locket. He recognized it as the one his wife Sarah had lost as a girl, long before they'd ever met. "She lost it at a lake 200 miles from here," he says, his voice trembling slightly. "How does it end up here 50 years later? The forest doesn't follow our rules, it has its own." Now Kells is no longer just a ranger, he is a reluctant chronographer, mapping not just trails and streams, but temporal anomalies and spatial impossibilities. He's racing against time itself, trying to understand the forest's strange grammar before another person is lost in its sentences. Some physicists speculate that geomagnetic anomalies could explain the compass disruptions. Paranormal experts talk about thin places, portals or overlaps between dimensions. But none explain why people lose time, why some come back aged, or why one man, recorded on a police body cam in 2011, was screaming, "Don't go near the trees, they remember you." The footage cut out 7 seconds later. He was never found. Whether it's a fold in space-time or something much darker, Brewer's Hollow remains one of the world's quietest mysteries, one that swallows time, people, and maybe even reality itself. If you ever hear ticking in the trees, turn around and don't look back. If this gave you chills, subscribe to Veil Vanquish for more real and imagined mysteries. Have you ever experienced lost time? Let us know in the comments below.